This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Football Party. I'm your host, Jarvis Davis, and riding with me today, no teacher, Tanisha Batiste. She will be back on Thursday, so don't fret, guys. I promise you, she will be back holding it down in that host seat like she always does. I have with me today Aaron Freeman, the longtime host of Locked On Falcons, and I have the lovely Tori McElhaney, who is the senior writer for the AtlantaFalcons.com. So I want to start off by saying thank you for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you download your podcast and wherever you download your podcast. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. I really appreciate that from you in advance. Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, coming up on today's show, we'll discuss when Michael Penix should take off his durag. We will put our professor hats on and grade this linebacker core led by Kaden Ellis, the man himself. But first, with all the conversations we've had and we'll continue to have about Terry Fontenot and how he's going to fix this defense, I feel the need to get you all's thoughts on the news that just dropped. It just came across the desk. Myles Garrett issued a statement thanking the city of Cleveland, and right towards the end, he informed the Browns that he would like to request a trade. Excuse me, sir? Tori, when you hear the name Myles Garrett and wanting a trade, do you feel that you should text Terry Fontenot personally and say, hey, man, I need you to get on this?
I mean, if I'm a decision maker in this league, I don't think there's a chance that I don't know that that's happening, and that I'm not thinking about ways to get him on my team. And I do think it's interesting that something that if you look at what Myles Garrett posted, his post is talking about being on a competitive team and within a competitive organization and playing for and contending for playoff appearances and Super Bowls. And I do not think that he's going to go somewhere that he does not believe has that capability. And because of that, it's like, where is he going to land? Because I think that there are going to be teams that can make a bunch of offers. And of course, the Browns have a lot of say and power as well. But because it is a trade, it's not just like he's hitting the free agency market and can kind of choose where he wants to go to, but you can't tell me that he doesn't have a say. So because of that, I would be really curious to see what teams kind of come out of probably the conversation in the next 24 hours and who is leading the charge to potentially land him.
You know what? I find it interesting that it just happened after we just witnessed the most amazing, non-expected trade ever in NBA history, right? And that's not hyperbole. I don't think so at this point, about 25 hours removed from the news dropping of Luka Doncic in trade to the LA Lakers. But I do feel I find this is interesting, right? Because going back to Thomas Dimitroff, who general manager for here a long time, have had a lot of success. One of these most successful general managers in Atlanta Falcons history. I know people don't probably put his name with that, but it's the truth. So, I think go back to that trade where he traded up for Julio Jones, and I know I was one of those persons. I was like, man, all this for Julio? I mean, I understand the talent, I get it, but woo, that is an absolute haul to jump up that far. So, and you got to think, you got to be dang near halfway crazy to pull that off. And I think that it got me to think is like, okay, is this the opportunity that Terry Fontenot has to pull off this type of move? Because it looks like he has his quarterback, right? Thomas Dimitroff had his quarterback. So he understood that he had somebody that was going to be able to get Julio Jones the football, and they were going to have immediate success, right? Given this type of talent and how everyone was projecting him. So is this the opportunity, Aaron, for Terry to trying to say, hey, man, I want to keep my job. I got the quarterback, Mr. Blank. So, hey, let me do this halfway semi-crazy move and go get Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns. by the way, that was the team that Thomas and Mitchell traded with to get Julio Jones.
Well, I think if you're Terry Fontenot, you're chomping at the bit to make this trade. But I thought Torrey said something interesting where, Myles Garrett wants to play for a contender. And are we talking about the Falcons in that conversation?
Yes. I'm waiting for this.
Are the Falcons in that conversation of like, hey, Myles, come down to Atlanta and we're ready to go. We're ready to win Super Bowls. We haven't made the playoffs in 7 years. But, that's, to me, the question that you have to have. So I do think if you're, obviously one of the other 31 GMs in the NFL, you're making that phone call to see what it would take. I'm sure Cleveland is hanging up the phone on a number of those phone calls because I know they come out and said, because this has kind of been brewing for months with Myles Garrett, that they're like, we're not trading him. And, I remember the last time a high-profile player, I think his name was Lamar Jackson, requested a trade, and then he got a $260 million contract like 2 months later. So we'll see whether or not this leads to anything with Myles Garrett. But certainly, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're making phone calls, you're offering whatever you need to offer, multiple firsts at this stage for Myles Garrett. And you just hope that Myles decides that Atlanta is the place for him to finish his NFL career, which would be an incredible thing. But if you can't tell, I'm not holding my breath that the Atlanta Falcons are at the top of Myles Garrett's short list of teams I want to get traded to at this stage. Maybe in a couple of months, maybe we can be having a different conversation about this Falcons team. But at this stage, I don't know if they're going to be near the top of the list.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because here's the thing. To me, I feel like, given the talent, you pick up the phone, right? But for me, I kind of skew towards a little bit that, hey, this might be another type of move to put a Band-Aid on something, right? Like I'm looking for this team to build something that can last, right? Because like how many years does Myles Garrett have left, right? He's been in the league 8 years. This dude hasn't had less than 10 sacks since 2017. Oh man, he's been productive all out the world. Oh yes, that's great. But what if you only got 2 years left? Are the Falcons gonna make the doggone Super Bowl in 2 years? I don't know if I can say that. As a matter of fact, from a credibility standpoint, I'm not going to say that because I feel like there are some holes they have to fill, and we'll talk about those a little bit later in the show. But I feel like there are some holes that they have to fill, and I think that Myles Garrett, albeit it would be amazing for him to come in here and be that same productive guy that he's been for Cleveland for so long. But oh my gosh, man, just long term, which general managers have to think about short term and long term, because hey, that's just kind of how this game works. I feel like this is going to be something to kind of keep an eye on as this thing play out, because I'm not sure that Cleveland isn't going to play hardball and just like, hey man, we gave you all this money. You need to play the doggone contract out. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it. I just want to kind of get you guys' thought on that because I thought that was very interesting that he came out with this little note as if he was entering in the transfer portal or something. I was just like they're just telling you the era that we in with these players, man. They just grow up I'm about to announce my stuff on Instagram. I ain't gonna talk to a reporter and let them break it. It's just like, all right, here we are. But speaking of holes to fill, Senior Bowl wrapped up. It was an exciting, kind of, Jack Besh at the last minute, in last minute touchdown and end up being the Senior Bowl MVP. But I know we talked about all the holes and everything on this defense and what Terry Fontenot has to do to be able to fill those. But I want to get you all's thoughts after watching the game, or if you got a chance to watch the game. Is there someone that caught your eye that can come in and use, sorry, I don't know if you know, but I have my term as far as when it comes to drafting. It's called IID, immediate impact on defense. Is there a person on the offensive side of the football that you feel that down there at the Senior Bowl performed during the week, during the game, that you feel that can really have an immediate impact on offense, given what they already have on this roster?
I'm going to be completely honest. I don't care about the offense right now. Like, I know that this question is specifically geared to answering a question about the offense, and I get it.
I love this answer, by the way.
However, like I have purposefully not watched film on a lot of offensive guys. I have purposefully only like really read up on guys playing. I only watch them because that is how significantly I feel the Falcons have to, at this point, prioritize the defense. Like there's like outside of maybe like a tackle because of the nature of where Jake Matthews and Caleb McGarry are in their contracts and like with Jake Matthews, like his age, like, okay, a tackle, but I also am very much under the like, maybe go out and get a tackle next year with your first round draft pick. Like there is literally no priority for me offensively. Like none. There's no priority. If the biggest priority to me is like re-signing Drew Dalman. Like I don't have a care in the world about like what is happening with the draft prospects offensively. And I hope that people don't think like, oh, it's a cop out. Like, no, I really truly believe this, that I don't care about what's happening with offensive players. You need to make a stand and a statement defensively. And I think that needs to be both in free agency and through the draft. Like, I don't think it's one or the other. Like, it's both for me. So I'm respectfully not answering your question.
You know what? That's why I rock with you. I rock with you the long way. Like what, man? Blank them offensive picks. You know what I'm saying? Like blank them offensive picks.
You have had 4 draft cycles where like priority has been go out, get an offensive weapon. You've done that. Yes. You've done that 4 times. And I am just talking like first round and like high second round.
Sure.
But I swear, if it's a like 5th year in a row that an offensive like weapon gets taken, I will welcome them to Atlanta with open arms, but I will be like, what is happening here?
If Terry Fontenot drafts an offensive player in the first round this year for the 2025 NFL draft, I'm trying to figure out who's gonna have an aneurysm first, you or me.
It's like there's just gonna be like a Tory-sized hole in whatever wall is like closest to me, where I'm just like.
Yes. Tori, I absolutely love how you just eloquently laid out, said blank them offensive picks, blank them folks down there at the Senior Bowl who played offense and catch the football.
You know, I'm sure they were lovely, and I'm sure they're going to help some team be good, you know, offensively, and they'll fit right in, and they'll be fun to watch, and you'll be talking about offensive player of the year. I don't care. Like, I don't care about offensive rookie of the year for the Falcons in 2025. I care about what the heck they're doing on defense. That's where I'm at.
I love that, Tori. So, Aaron, you know, by the looks on your face, I feel like you might be going in a different direction. But what say you, man? Have you been just said, you know, blank them doggone offensive picks? Or are you saying, hey, Terry Fontenot can get a little savvy and maybe pick up an offensive tackle that might be available in the second or maybe even the first round?
Yeah, I'm in favor of, you know, taking offensive linemen, you know, later in the draft, not early in the draft. I'm in a similar boat as Tori is, like out of spite. Like I'm not watching offensive players. Like just like no, I don't want any part. I've had people ask me like, "Oh, what do you think of this Elijah Arroyo, the tight end out of Miami or whatever?" I'm like, he's fine, sure, whatever. I don't care. You know?
I'm sure he's great.
I'm sure he's good. I'm sure he's gonna be great.
The next 3 months, I will watch him play football, and I'll be like, yeah, he's good. But like that is something that I am punting to the very end of this process. at this stage, because I'm just like, I do not care, like Tori said, about offensive players. I can just picture Tori when, the Falcons draft an offensive player early in the draft and they bring him to the building and she walks up to him and hugs him and says, "Oh," and then she whispers in his ear, "I hate you," that sort of thing. So like, I that's what I'm picturing going on in her mind when it comes to the Falcons drafting an offensive player. So I have similar sentiments at this stage. Yeah.
Can y'all imagine?
Gosh. Yes, that will be so interesting. So interesting they were to do that. So I think that, which brings up a question that we're going to talk about on the other side. The Falcons have a first, second, fifth, 2 7-round picks. We're going to have to figure out whether they need to go all in on the defensive side. We'll discuss that next, right here on Atlanta Football Party, right now. I'll let you know that this episode of the Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Gametime. Looking for tickets for your next event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right place can be an absolute headache. But with Gametime picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. First, let me let you know that, hey, Cat Williams is coming into town. I think he's going to be around March or so. So, I have to go to Gametime because I know they're going to give me the best price and they give you the all-in pricing. That is the best feature in the absolute world because we know how many websites are dropping these prices. And then once you get time to pay, they hit you with the $17,000 in fees. We don't do that here at Gametime. So with Gametime picks, they have done all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals. So you have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute, lowest prices guaranteed. Talking about the Atlanta Falcons right here on the Atlanta Football Party. And want to say thank you for making them your first listen today. We really appreciate that from you in advance. We just love talking about the Falcons right here on the Atlanta Football Party. We got my main man, Aaron Freeman, who's Locked On Falcons host, Tori McElhaney, who's going to have an aneurysm when with Terry Fontenot drafts the tight end from Penn State. I saw that on the mock draft. I almost wanted to burn that piece of paper. I wanted to burn my modem because, like, the fact that you even brought me to this is put me in a bad mood. So yes, that's how I'm feeling today. So I appreciate you, T, for being my spirit animal today. But I think the more, in all seriousness, though, I feel with the Falcons, having that first, second, fifth, and 2 7th-round picks, draft kind of a little slim picking. You're talking about going into a draft with 5 picks. So my question to you, Aaron, so with Terry only having 5 picks in this draft, do the Falcons have too many holes to fill in one offseason, you think?
I mean, yes. The answer to that question is yes. They have too many holes considering how few draft picks they have. Because basically, if they go into this offseason thinking we'll solve all of our problems in the draft, then that means you're expecting, those 7th-round picks to start games for you because they need multiple starters, I think, on the defensive side of the ball, in addition to the depth that they probably could use on the offensive side of the ball at some key spots. But I think that, to me, is going to be the big question for this team heading into the offseason because it's like you don't really have enough assets in the draft to really solve your problems, even if you do trade some players and trade back and accumulate more, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th-round picks or whatever. You're still going to be relying on a bunch of sort of rookies that probably aren't going to be ready to start games for you. So to me, like, that looks ahead to free agency and you just sort of go like, are the Falcons going to be as aggressive in March as they need to be? Is this going to be an offseason like 2023 where they were pretty busy that first week of free agency to sign a bunch of players? they were busy last year, and then they kind of sat out the rest of free agents. They're like, okay, we got Kirk Cousins, we got Darnell Mooney, we got Charlie Warner, Ray-Ray McCloud. All right, we're good. And it was like, are you? And so it was like, I think that's going to be interesting to see sort of how aggressive they are in free agency to fill some of these holes, especially in some spots where I think they probably need a starter or two. And I think relying on the draft, I think it's realistic to think you can get a starter in the first or second round. Hopefully you'll see more impact from this rookie class than you saw the previous year's rookie class right away. But I do feel like if the Falcons are going to be aggressive filling some of these holes on the defensive side of the ball, they probably need to sign some free agents. So it's going to be a challenge, I think, to sort of balance that with a cap situation that isn't ideal. And so you got to move money around, and then that leads to potentially long-term ramifications down the road from a cap standpoint if you're restructuring contracts and whatnot. So Terry's got his work cut out, I think, this offseason to kind of fill some of these issues.
And Tori, do you feel like Terry has his work cut out, given that you only have a small amount of draft picks, for this particular draft class, and you have the Kirk Cousins saga situation going on, and you're currently, as of right now, you're over the salary cap with about between $7 and $8 million.
Yeah, this offseason is kind of reminiscent to me of the 2022 offseason, where you felt like you had some pieces that you felt really good about, and then you knew that a lot of the depth was going to have to be filled out with guys on kind of just these 1-year deals. And I think Free makes a good point just about how I think the moves in free agency are going to dictate the direction that the Falcons go in the draft, and how aggressive they are in free agency will kind of tell us one way or the other how aggressive they're going to be trying to accumulate more draft capital in the draft and in the weeks and months leading up to the draft. The problem is that I feel like, to the point of there aren't enough, you don't have enough resources to patch the holes that you have on this team. It kind of just feels like, and I've used this analogy before, where you're in a boat and water keeps popping up in places, and you feel one spot and then something else pops up, and you have to and it's just kind of it just feels like that's where this team is right now. It feels like there are a lot of holes, and every time that you maybe move money to fill one or move draft capital, or, because that's the thing, is if the Matthew Judon trade works out and you get more production out of Matthew Judon, I don't think we're sitting here kind of talking about how not great it is that the Falcons don't have a 3rd round draft pick. If even the Kirk Cousins-ness of it all works out, we're not really talking about not having a 5th round draft pick because of the tampering violations. There's a lot of reasons why the Falcons are where they are right now. And it feels like, again, it just feels like these are all problems. You thought that you fixed the quarterback position by going out and getting Kirk Cousins. And not only did that not work out, but then you lose a draft pick. You thought that you were fixing your pass rush by going out and getting Matthew Judon, and then you lose a 3rd round draft pick, and not get the production that you wanted or needed. I think that's why it's so this is a truly, we'll see kind of Terry Fontenot and this front office, their strategic mind, because it's one thing right when they first got here to get yourself out of salary cap hell and to move on from aging players with these lofty contracts and just kind of taking things on the chin. But this is more strategy in the sense of roster building after you thought you made the moves that would make you a more competitive team. And it didn't work out. You got one more win, despite everything that you had been doing to build up to the point that you were in last year. So if you're this front office, you're at a crossroads right now, because the strategy of what you could do or couldn't do in the past is not the situation that you have right now. And it's because of kind of the accumulation of all these other things that have happened to put them in this position.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, because that's why I thought the whole Myles Garrett piece was interesting, because of the failed Kirk Cousinness. I love that Kirk Cousinness of the situation that they're in from a salary cap standpoint, and the whole Matthew Judon not coming through like you thought he would. Like pretty much everyone. I mean, I know I was on the board. I didn't think the man was going to get double-digit sacks, but I was saying, hey, this dude should be productive given the situation, with the Patriots before he got hurt. Like, okay, he's going to come off an injury, but that's those guys come off injury all the time and are still able to give you some production, but it just wasn't there. So I wonder, based off of how inclusive the Falcons are in on Myles Garrett, like, because that's why I'm big on the Falcons being long term, and building something, because they're in like you said, they're in a space where they're at a crossroads. They are at a crossroads, and when you're at a crossroads, you got to figure, okay, either I'm gonna continue down this path, or I'm gonna say, hey, man, we got to start making some tough decisions. We're gonna have to start cutting some people who've been around here for a long time, and we're gonna go down to the studs, kinda, because our offense should be able to carry us for the next few years. What they have on the offensive side of the football. But when it comes to this defense, we're going to have to kind of do a restructuring and some reshaping, and not restructuring contracts, like getting rid of some contracts to try to make room for the future. And I think that's kind of where they are. But Aaron, I would be interested to get your thoughts on this. Given the situation that we just talked about, given the Kirk Cousinsness, I'm gonna get that smoothly at some point before this show is over with. Do you feel that Terry will be forced to trade down? Because I thought it was very interesting that he mentioned the press conference talking about trading down, and nobody asked him about it. From what I remember. Tori, I know you were there.
Yeah, no, I took note of that as well. The fact that he offered up, like, maybe we trade down, and it's like, oh, okay.
But does he have a choice, Free?
But sure.
Right. So that kind of makes it weird, right? So does he have a choice in the matter as to whether or not they should trade down from 15?
Again, I think a lot depends on what they do in March. Like, if they're aggressive, whether it's 1-year contracts or multi-year contracts, filling some of these holes in free agency, I don't think they have to feel as compelled to trade down. But if we're going into this year's draft like we were going into last year's draft, being like, hey, man, you could use a corner, you could use another safety, you could use more pass rush, you could use, throw linebacker into the mix now, all of these issues, if these are still question marks for this team heading into, that last week of April when the draft happens, then I do think you're kind of forced to have to trade down at that point, because I don't think you have the assets to really fill all of these issues, in addition to shoring up the depth pieces that you probably still need to invest. Again, I would love them to go all defense in this draft, but at the same time, I don't think you can neglect some of those areas of concern on the offensive side of the ball, where you probably could use at least another young body that has some developmental potential down the road. So right now, I just kind of look at this team where it's like, you probably ideally would have 8 or 9 draft picks to be able to address all these issues, and you have 5 right now. So if we're not chipping away at some of these issues in March, then I do feel like you're kind of forced at that stage to have to trade down.
And I'll say this too, of the 5 draft picks, 2 are 7th round picks. So that's another thing. If we were talking about 5 draft picks and you had, another, you had a third, or you had 2 thirds instead of 2 7ths, or even 4th and 5th, it's the fact that there isn't kind of that day 2-ness.
Right. Yeah.
That I think that you feel very differently about the options that you have in this year's draft, because of those 2 7th round picks. It's just kind of like undrafted free agents to a certain extent. And you need more than that right now.
And it's so Falcon-y for them not to have that many draft picks in this particular draft, because The D-line depth, edge guys, it's so deep. It's so deep. Oh my gosh. It's just makes my stomach start there. Just boil when I think about the situation that the Falcons are in right now. But coming up next, we're going to pass out some grades, y'all. How about that? This linebacker core, they are on the hot seat. We'll talk about that next, right here on Atlanta Football Party. Yes, this episode of the Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Guess what, guys? Super Bowl 59 is here. I'm telling you, it's here. It is not going anywhere. You know why not? It's not going anywhere because guess what? Roger Goodell ain't going to pass up on no money right here. I'm telling you, it's going down. So one of the things that you have to think about, right? One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than will FanDuel Sportsbook. Because you got Patrick Mahomes, you have Saquon Barkley, you got Jalen Hurts. All of those guys are there for you to make some money, whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling MVP, or even betting on the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. I'm talking about the live betting feature, guys. It is absolutely amazing. You stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and they have been super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's like putting lemon pepper on some hot wings. I'm talking about, come on, now, this is the perfect combination. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Again, download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, guys. Here's the thing. We've been going through all of our position grades and giving out grades and everything. And I think this group is particularly interesting because there was a lot of up and downness, to this group. And I think that we can all agree that Kaden Ellis led this group, right? I feel like once Jimmy Lake started to use him like he was brought in to be, I feel like he showed you why Terry Fontenot brought him in once he became a free agent, because obviously he was familiar with him being down in that Saints organization. So I think that, and we'll start there. So for me, I felt like this group overall was like a C plus, because and that's not an indictment on Kaden, but I just feel like with Troy Andersen not being able to stick on the field, Nate Landman taking a step back, obviously dealing with injuries and not being the guy that the two-down player that I thought he can be, and you kind of put up with the whole pass coverage thing, but it just came to, like I'm sure Aaron will lay out here in just a second. I think that, overall, it was just average. And I feel like if a guy like Troy Andersen would have stayed on the field and gave us maybe one more performance like he did against the Saints, I feel like the grade would be a little bit higher. But Aaron, what say you? What do you grade this linebacker core, and what are your thoughts on how Kaden Ellis performed this season?
Yeah, I think I'd probably give it a similar grade, a C plus. I feel like Kaden Ellis, if I'm just isolating him, I'd probably give him a B plus, borderline like A minus type of grade, just with how impactful he was in the back half of the season as a pass rusher and being one of the top pass rushers. But kind of that other spot is just kind of a C minus overall when you just look at the revolving door, and Troy Andersen's hurt, Nate Landman's hurt, JD Bertrand's missing a couple of weeks due to a concussion. And you just kind of got a nothing burger from that spot. You didn't get the sort of impact run plays that you got the year before from Nate Landman. Obviously, Troy Andersen not being healthy, outside of that one game against the Saints, really didn't move the needle for you and whatnot. So I feel like this linebacker core, certainly you go into this offseason feeling like that's a position to potentially get maybe an upgrade, to get, at least someone that you can trust at this stage to play next to Kaden Ellis for a full 17 games and at least give you decent play at this stage. So I certainly think like a C+ is appropriate for the unit as a whole. But Kaden Ellis as an individual, I thought he was outstanding this year. You got to see him as a pass rusher, which is what he does best. The run defense and coverage stuff can be a little up and down with Kaden Ellis, but I think for the most part, like, you're not expecting Fred Warner type play from him. So you're not really holding it against him. And as long as he's making plays on third downs, as we saw so consistently week in and week out in the back half of the season, you'll forgive that run fit wasn't great. He didn't cover that guy, the way that you wanted him to cover that guy or whatever. We'll excuse was Alvin Kamara have like a big drop in one of those Saints games near the end of the game. We're like, Kaden Ellis wasn't in great position, but hey, he got some pressure earlier in the game. So that ultimately, I think you tend to forgive a lot of Kaden Ellis's faults because what he does well, he did really at a high level last year.
I think too that like if you had someone who better complemented like Caden's, like the parts of Caden's game that isn't as strong as his ability to rush the passer, I feel like you feel differently. And I think for the Falcons, they want it so badly to be Troy Andersen. That's why they got him, was because he has a different skill set, and they felt very strongly that, he has the sideline to sideline speed that can help in all of the ways that Kaden Ellis is not as strong in. But you can't look over the fact that this guy just hasn't been out on the field. And it's really tough because this inside linebacker group specifically was a group that I was very excited about coming into the season. And I thought it had so much potential. I thought it had so much potential, not just for like the impact and the productivity that I felt like it could have for the defensive unit as a whole, but also in like the creativity that I felt like they could have. Like there were so many times where I'm like, I'm fully expecting Kaden, Troy, and Nate to be on the field at the same time together in certain looks and certain packages. And I was really looking forward to that. But then of course, Nate gets hurt, takes him a while to get to 100%. Then Troy gets hurt and never gets back to 100%. All the while you're having Kaden kind of playing a bunch of different roles and playing them well, like to y'all's point, like doing well. And he became such an asset for this team, but it can't just be Kaden. And I think that the biggest issue I had, and the reason why I can't give this group overall more than probably a C, is the fact that their coverage, like I didn't think that you could trust anything that they were doing when they weren't just like plugging in run fits or like rushing the passer. I think anytime you had to ask this group, no matter who was in, to cover someone on the back end, like I felt like there were miscues. And I oftentimes felt like the middle, and I've said this on this podcast before, I oftentimes felt like the middle of the field kind of just felt like a very easy spot for opposing offenses to take advantage of. And whether that falls on the linebackers or the nickel position, I think depended on the look and from play to play. But that's an area of weakness for this defense. And I have to think that linebacker plays a role in that. And I feel like you need a bit more variety in what you have at the position. And again, you thought that the variety was going to come from Troy Andersen, but he hasn't been healthy enough for us to be able to see it. So it's hard for me to kind of sit here and judge one way or the other whether they do have variety on the roster, because you haven't seen them enough to know. You've seen spurts of it and you've seen flashes of it, but spurts and flashes does not a career make, does not a season make. We haven't seen him for a season. So it's really, really difficult to really grade this inside linebacker position and also decide where it goes from here.
Yeah. And, my obsession with them bringing in a rookie defensive lineman, an edge guy, kind of started to leak a little bit towards that linebacker core, because I feel like you just laid out beautifully how Kaden Ellis can rush the passer, right? And you talked about Troy Andersen. When he's healthy, he can flourish in coverage situations. And you talk about Nate Landman being a 2-down linebacker, which really doesn't exist in today's game. But hey, you kind of take it as it goes when you hit like that on an undrafted player. So I think that the Falcons are in the space. Terry Fontenot, his whole front office and the organization, they have to bring in a guy that can kind of combine those guys together, right? If you can find that guy, obviously, of that type of talent and being able to do those many things, is gonna probably have to be in the first round. So I don't know, T, if you would lose it if they would draft a guy about like Jalen Walker, so you play stand up, come off the edge, get you kind of do a whole type Michael Parsons type situation. Not saying that he is that type of guy, but you can move him around. He has a little flexibility. I feel like the Falcons just have to put themselves in position to be open to that first round pick, and it has to be on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, when I think we're all in agreement there. And
Sure.
I am really curious that a piece of this conversation when you're talking about inside linebackers is what Jeff Ulbrich wants to do with the position, because Jeff Ulbrich is a former inside linebacker. Like this is a guy, this is his position. This is the position that he played.
He was a thumper too.
Yeah, it's the position that he coached for years and years. And as we all know, like communication begins and ends at that position. It's the middle of the field for a reason. The quarterback of a defense is the inside linebacker, is the like for a reason.
Sure.
And I would love to know, and this is probably one of the first questions you ask Jeff Ulbrich in a couple of weeks, like, what do you think about this inside linebacker core? How do you want to see it evolve? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Because that to me will tell a lot about the direction that the group goes in, because it's like, does Jeff Ulbrich prioritize that position above anything that's happening at the defensive line? And, that's a piece of the conversation that we're talking about, kind of the unknowns of the position group and where it goes from here. Like Jeff Ulbrich is kind of the linchpin of this group and of this position. And what does he want? Does he want more of kind of what you're talking about? Or does he feel like he has good pieces that just weren't healthy? Like what is his evaluation of this group? Because I feel like his evaluation is the one that I care the most about to hear.
Because it should matter, like right. Given the experience, playing a position and being able to, get those jet linebackers, those guys to be able to have, I think it's not, I forget his last name, Jamari. He had like 158 tackles this year, and he's a free agent. Terry, you might, if you want to kind of fill a hole, and figure it out, there might be a route you might need to take. So yeah, definitely Jeff Ulbrich opinion about this linebacker core should matter, and it will matter, I feel. But coming up next, we will talk about the Kirk Cousins of it all. One of the things, Aaron, I feel like, I know we've talked about, had conversations about Kirk Cousins, like what's going to happen, what will happen, what should probably happen, or what's the ideal situation. But for me, I feel like the assumption is that Terry Fontenot will find a way for Kirk Cousins to not be on this roster that makes sense financially for the Falcons. But do you feel that there's some value for him to be on this roster? I'll bring up this real quick point. Bijan Robinson talked about how on a podcast with Michael Parsons, ironically, hey man, you need to start doing some selling, bro. Like, make that happen, dog. Like, make a connection, bro, while you're out there. You know what I'm saying? You on the podcast with Michael Parsons, you need to make it you need to maximize your opportunity, my brother. but do you feel that Kirk being on this roster would be of value to the Atlanta Falcons in 2025?
Sure. In a vacuum, sure. Like, you have a young quarterback in Michael Penix. You often like to pair that guy with a veteran quarterback that can sort of be the extra quarterback coach in the room. I know Raheem's hired like 7 quarterback coaches. And so, having an 8th guy probably isn't going to move the needle.
They're going to get hired to be head coaches soon.
Yeah.
Aaron,
yeah.
That's why he did that.
But, it always helps to have a veteran. So Kirk obviously could be that veteran. You also have an injury history of Michael Penix when he's been a starter in the past. And so, that means that, especially for a team that really wants to make the playoffs, like, you need to make sure your backup quarterback situation is right, because in the event that Michael Penix goes through some injury issues in the pros, you want to be able to have that guy plug and play and be able to win football games so that, you can hopefully, make the playoffs and do all that stuff that comes with that. So I think based off of those two factors, Kirk makes a ton of sense. The problem is, $40 million backup, so that's where it becomes an issue, right? In a vacuum, yeah, Kirk would check a lot of the boxes that you're looking for in a backup quarterback. It's just once you take it out of that vacuum and you start looking at the price tag, it all of a sudden doesn't make nearly as much sense as it did when you had price blindness, whatever that is called, when you just like, you just going shopping and you're just like, I don't care what the prices are. I'm just putting stuff in my cart. And bad analogy. I don't know, but
it's a great analogy. As a dad, like I just bought some shoes that were pre-owned, and those were shoes that I wanted, and I got them at an excellent price. So I understand fully what you're talking about, because I have a budget and my wife is not going to look at something that costs less than $100. So hey, man, like that's just how the world works, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, as long as Terry understands, bro, you on a budget, sir. So yeah, he didn't understand that, and he's paying for it right now as we speak. But Tori, as far as you go, do you feel like Kirk Cousins being on this roster in 2025 can be an asset to this team?
Yes, it can be. It's whether or not moves are made around Kirk Cousins. And what I mean by that is not the Falcons offense. What I mean by that is there a quarterback hungry team out there that would value someone like Kirk Cousins to the point of offering something that both Kirk Cousins and the Falcons would be willing to play with? And all of those stipulations are stipulations, because the only way that makes sense when you look at the contract and what he is owed and the breakdown of it, the only way that the Falcons can kind of get out of it and get out of kind of the chain of it monetarily is via a trade. Kirk Cousins has a no trade clause. So he has to waive that. He has to want to go to whatever place hypothetically is putting this trade package together. And not only that, the Falcons have to feel like whatever they're offering is worth it. And does it make up for the fact, like, are they taking on his base salary in 2025? Like, what are the stipulations of the trade? That's the only, there are so many moving pieces when it comes to a decision as to what to do with Kirk Cousins that is in Kirk Cousins' hands, it's in the Falcons' hands, and it's in the hands of whatever hypothetical team we're talking about. And what is Kirk Cousins worth to another team? He said the last time we spoke to him that he said that he still believes he can be a starting quarterback in this league. So if that's what he wants to go and prove, then there has to be a team willing to, and I do think that there would be teams willing to get someone like Kirk Cousins, knowing what their situations are at the quarterback position, and at least wanting to infuse some type of experience into that position. But what is he worth to you? Like, that's the question. What is he, if you're a team, like, what is he worth to you? And is it enough for the Falcons and Kirk Cousins to bite on it?
Wow. You know what comes to mind, T? A team that a certain quarterback who has over $200 million in guaranteed bread, popped his Achilles twice. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Cleveland might be in the business of acquiring talent, since their best player has requested a trade, and y'all need Kevin Stefanski wants to win now. Like, I understand what y'all want to do in the front office. Acquiring all talent. Yeah, I need a quarterback that can throw the rock. That has familiarity with my offense. So, hey, that team in the orange and white, they might be willing to have a conversation, because they're in a really blanked up situation right now. So I would not be surprised at all if that trade situation works out. But ideally for you, Free, like, how does this work out for you? I know you might be a little perturbed by still talking about Kirk. So it does the ideal situation for you say, hey man, cut the man and just keep it moving?
Well, again, my stance all along is piggybacking on something Tori said is like, I think the ball is in Kirk's court. Kirk has to want to do a deal.
Sure.
And if you're Kirk Cousins, historically speaking, when it's come to him and his agent, Mike McCartney, they're an all-time duo when it comes to leverage and being able to maximize that leverage in negotiation. And you don't really have that leverage when you're talking about a trade, right? And so if you're them, you want him to be cut. And so that you will have that ability to approach teams with some sort of leverage. And when it comes to negotiating his next contract and whatnot. And so that's why, like, I tend to be a little skeptical that Kirk is going to play along with the Falcons in this situation.
Why would he? Or why should he?
Yeah,
That's
and again, I know people listening to the show may feel some type of way, but if you're in Kirk Cousins' shoes, like I wouldn't necessarily feel compelled to do the Falcons a favor after this last 9 months and how things went down. And I'm signing with you, and then we're drafting a quarterback, and and then you bench me, and all that stuff. So like, if you're Kirk Cousins, like that's why like I just sit here and I go like I don't see. There's a non-zero chance that the Falcons can trade Kirk Cousins. I absolutely acknowledge that. I just don't think it's that much higher than zero at this stage, given what we know how Kirk and his agent usually approach these things. So I would love to see the Falcons, get a deal done, but I just don't think it's that realistic. And so ultimately, I think when push comes to shove, the Falcons will be forced to cut Kirk and move on in that way, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think that's probably makes the most sense for me. I think for this organization, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be haggling. Hey, man, please waive that trade clause, please. Why don't you? We know we cut you. We know we benched you. We know we drafted a quarterback when we told you you are our guy. You were the elite processor that we've been looking for all our lives, and you're gonna come and save the world. And Kirk Chains was gonna come down here. You're gonna be walking around with your shirt off after every game, doing the swag and surfing, all that stuff. Yeah, man. I know that's what we told you. I know that's what we told you. But hey, man, just do it this favor, baby. Like, so yeah, I don't want the Falcons.
That's so good for October.
Right.
That's exactly what you got in October.
It was all true. It was all so simple. It was all so simple. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was all so simple. That is an excellent song, by the way. That's why I repeated the name. See if y'all caught that. But I think this is one of those situations where I feel like a resolution will come soon. And because like I don't want to see the Falcons looking like Keith Sweat. Like that just begging and all that stuff, man. Stop begging, man. You made a bad decision, be accountable for it and try to fix that jump, man. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where I am with it. But coming up next, we're gonna have a conversation about Michael Penix durag. Shout out to all my everydayers. For all you people who come to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube and wherever you download your podcast, we appreciate you. Give us a 5-star review. We'll think that from you, in advance, guys. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what the hell you waiting on. But y'all, obviously we talked about it a little bit earlier. Bijan Robinson was on the podcast with Michael Parsons. Again, Bijan, maximize your opportunities in life. Promise you, man. You'll take you places that you probably have never been before, which is ridiculous to say because he's in the NFL and probably one of the better young running backs in the NFL. So I'm talking crazy right now. So I'm gonna get to you all in a second, so y'all can start looking at me like that. So he was on the podcast with Michael Parsons, and Michael was asking him about the do-rag situation with Michael Penix, and Michael Penix has a lot of do-rags. He wears them a lot. I can count maybe ever that I've seen him without a do-rag on his top of his head. Maybe. So
one time. I think one time.
One time.
And it was the day after he was drafted. He was in his suit and it was his introductory and like that is the one time.
That man, mama raised him right. So there we go. And Bajan said, that man wears the do-rag in the sauna, even when he goes into the sun. Oh, my question to you all, of course we having fun with this, guys. Is there a situation where Michael Penix, if you are a person that's in his circle, close to him, and say, hey man, I know you like to rock those do-rags, but Tori, what's a situation for you where you say, hey, bro, I need you to take that doggone do-rag off right now, sir?
Here's the thing. I think he can do what he wants to do. Like,
Man, sure. Yeah.
I am not about to tell somebody what they can or cannot do with their outfits and their choice of headgear.
This statement.
I honestly, I am not to get political, but my body, my choice. So that applies to.
We believe in that on this show.
Yes.
If he wants to wear it, let the man wear it. And honestly, I don't think I would love to hear Bajan really get at, because I'm sure it's just I don't think Bajan can make fun of anybody and not be like, I'm so sorry, man. That was super mean. And I love you, my guy. And for him to say it, I think is really funny, because he's like, dude, we're in the sauna. What are you doing?
What are you doing, bro?
But personally for me, doesn't hurt me at all. I actually love playing the game with some of my coworkers. What color do-rag is he going to be wearing today? It's kind of become a thing. What is he going to walk in with? I have yet to see green or yellow. He basically sticks to red, gray. He has purple. I think I've seen him with a blue one on. I'm not entirely
the black
sure.
one on.
The
black one in the puffer coat. That was peak Michael Penix for me.
Yeah, so there are some.
After the game. Oh, man.
I kind of want to know how many he has. I have a lot of questions about it, but it doesn't diminish the fact that I'm if he wants to wear them, he can wear them. It's his decision and it's his life. So y'all don't come for this man and his do-rags, because that's for him.
Reed, my bald-headed brethren.
Yes.
What would you say?
I have a
scenario where Michael Penix, bro, I need you to take that do-rag off, sir.
Well, I think the only time I expect him to definitely take it off when he was at his wedding, which whenever that's coming up, as an engaged man, right? You got wedding photos and whatnot, and it's that's not going to age great if you're rocking the do-rag.
He wasn't wearing the do-rag in the engagement photo, so he did not engage with the do-rag on. So that is twice. I said I only saw him once, but that's twice that we know he didn't have it on.
Yes. So I think there's a pattern emerging, happy wife, happy life, that sort of thing. So basically, for Michael Penix, whenever his girl doesn't want him to wear the do-rag, it's the time not to wear the do-rag. But on a more personal level, I would imagine the only other time that he's taking it off is when he needs to get a fresh lineup, and so it's a little harder to cut when he's rocking the do-rag, although I'm sure there are probably some barbers in Atlanta that could figure it out.
That tail fade when you got that do-rag on.
So I feel like those are probably the wedding and when he's getting a fresh lineup is basically the only times he probably takes it off. And I think those are the only times he really needs to.
Yeah, there were two instances that I had in my head when I came up with this question. I'm sure you all know by now that I came up with this question because this is the type of question that I probably will only be the person to ask. We wouldn't be talking about this, I feel, if Tanisha was here. So no shade towards Tanisha. That's just how I roll. I'm a little silly at times. But one was the wedding. Absolutely. Hands down. Gotta take that off, bro. Because you're not about to be in pictures 10, 15 years from now rocking a do-rag.
He could put it for the reception. He could if he wanted to.
Reception, cool. Yeah. My wife, had a dress specifically for the reception. She changed. I ain't see her for a while. I don't know where she went. I thought she had left me in the reception. I was like, you picked a fine time to leave me. You should have left me at the altar if you're gonna do all that. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But yeah, Michael Penix, don't wear it at the wedding. But here's another situation where I feel like he should take off the do-rag. When you're at the doggone that big old table, and I hope Terry Bradshaw isn't still working at this time, still working for the network, working for Fox at this time, and you're answering questions about winning the Super Bowl and how does it feel and all that stuff. Yeah, I think that's a perfect time to take off the do-rag. And you know what? I should be up under it. He should go ball, man. Get that zero. Get that zero for the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Reveal that thing. Say, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? I pulled a zero, I cut my hair off because, hey, I knew that we were going to get this dub and get this Super Bowl, and we can have people stop talking about 28-3. We don't need no more conversations about that. So, yeah, wedding, and make sure, you win that Super Bowl. Go and take do-rag off.
Maybe it's a ploy. Like, maybe this is like the thing, like the lore of Michael Penix is like he takes off the do-rag if the Falcons reach the pinnacle.
Oh gosh.
I don't think so, but
oh, Tori, you were right there. You had me. I was there. I was there. You had me. All you had to do was give me the scripture. You know what I'm saying? We were ready to go.
Yeah.
We're going to the benediction, baby. We're about to ride out. But anyway, let's end this right now. I want to thank you guys for making Atlanta Football Party your first listen today. We appreciate you. And thank you. And why don't you make Locked On Falcons just your second listen? I promise you, Free is going to have to respond to this because he can do a whole show on responding to us and talking about how wrong we were. I've been listening, bro. I'm checking you out, dog. I understand. And also make sure you check out Tori McElhaney on AtlantaFalcons.com. Amazing content. Make sure you guys check her out as well. And guess what, guys? Tanisha will be back on Thursday. And, this is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.